How do you create a socialist society? Let's take a look. Before we get into modern socialist thought on how to transform from a capitalist society to a socialist society, let's take a look at a little bit of historical context. One of the first theories of socialist transformation was put forward by Karl Marx in his Critique of the Gotha program in 1875. In that, he outlined a transformation to socialism that involved two primary steps. The first step would be an intermediary society that did not implement the abilities/needs principle, which is, of course, from each according to their abilities to each according to their needs. It would instead be a society built around a labor contribution principle, which is that you are rewarded in line with your labor contribution. Only after this preliminary society built around a concept of labor contribution was well established would there begin kind of this slow transition to the implementation of the needs/wants, not needs/wants, abilities/needs principle. Unfortunately, history hasn't proceeded in the way that most socialist thinkers anticipated. We have not seen capitalism create a large homogeneous working class that responds to a crisis of capitalism to overthrow the capitalistic system. Instead, we've seen that capitalism has been very durable in the face of multiple crises. Given this failure, modern socialist thinkers have attempted to consider what better socialist transformation could and should look like. Though there are many different theories of socialist transformation, we will be covering the four main examples put forwards in the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy entry on socialism. For anyone that doesn't know, this is the best free online resource for philosophy. These four types of transformation can be categorized along two axes. The first is whether the transformation seeks to completely dismantle capitalism or simply alleviate its worst harms. The second is whether the transformation works from the top-down state perspective or a bottoms-up community perspective. There are then, therefore, four main categories of socialist transformation. The first is smashing capitalism. The second is taming capitalism. The third is escaping capitalism. And the fourth is eroding capitalism. We will discuss each of them in this video. Smashing capitalism involves taking control of the state via some mechanism, democratic or otherwise, and then using the power of the state to implement socialist policies and principles in a top-down fashion. This approach is and was favored by many revolutionary Marxists, and was used to successfully dismantle pre-existing capitalist systems in the former USSR and China. However, these two examples illustrate the risk of this approach, insofar as it illustrates the risk that instead of implementing a socialist society, you instead implement some form of state authoritarianism, which the USSR and China were by most accounts. This potentially stems from the challenges associated with this sort of socialist transformation within a democratic framework. Making a rapid transition to socialism would likely involve some growing pains along the way, and in a democratic society, it's easy to anticipate that the society would potentially turn counter-revolutionary as they experience those growing pains. So you can see that there is a tension and a proclivity towards authoritarianism in this type of transformation. Those concerns aside, we should not overlook the fact that this is the only type of transformation we're going to talk about today that has successfully dismantled a pre-existing capitalist society in real life. And that shouldn't be overlooked when we're considering what can actually be accomplished in real life. Taming capitalism involves taking control of the state via some mechanism, democratic or otherwise, and then using the power of the state to alleviate the harms of capitalism. This is very much the approach of social democrats and many liberals in general. We saw it employed to great effect in the 30 years following World War II, but it fell out of favor in governments across the world around in the early 1980s with the rise of neoliberalism. While this approach has a clear track record of working historically, it's not clear that it will be able to become the dominant system of thought over neoliberalism, given that it has already been defeated by neoliberalism and has yet to overtake it in popular thought. Additionally, if you are a socialist, this approach does not actually end with the dismantling of capitalism, which is a serious flaw from a socialist perspective. The third, and in my opinion, worst type of transformation is escaping capitalism. This combines alleviating the impacts of capitalism with a bottoms-up, community-based approach. In short, you and your community, or potentially just your family, can flee the impacts of capitalism by essentially trying to live a simple life, perhaps try and live off the grid, something along those lines. It is a way to get out of the capitalistic system. Unfortunately, this escape is not really available to most of the working class, as it requires money to do it. Given that flaw, I'm not really going to consider it much further. The fourth approach seeks to completely dismantle capitalism via a bottoms-up approach. This is called eroding capitalism. Eroding capitalism would involve the creation of many workers' co-ops and unions and other local socialist entities. And from there, after these entities have been created, they would work to slowly expand their power and, over time, move from the peripheries of power to the center of power and essentially control and govern how things get done within society. This would be an extended process and take quite some time to complete. Additionally, it would likely require at least some level of government support, which is why it is often combined with approach number 2, taming capitalism. Essentially, you have, in the short term, a government that works to alleviate the worst impacts of capitalism, while in the longer term, you have socialist entities that are slowly accumulating power until they themselves can become the dominant entities within society rather than the state itself. And those are the 4 main categories of socialist transformation: smashing capitalism, taming capitalism, escaping capitalism, and eroding capitalism. For my own purposes, each of them, besides escaping capitalism, seems to have merit and is worth considering. It's not clear to me that any one strategy is the best approach or the approach that will definitely work. It's simply hard to tell. Reality is a little bit too complicated for me. So that's essentially saying that smashing capitalism, eroding capitalism, and taming capitalism all have things that appeal to me. And to me, at least, I don't have a clear favorite. But how about you? Let me know down in the comments below. Oh yeah, yes, and if you made it this far, please like, comment, subscribe. You know the shill drill. Got a Twitch stream, please check that out. Thank you so much, and until in my next video, peace. Smashing capitalism involves... that's a hell of a sentence. All right.